Hello everybody, I'm Mike Russell, Managing Editor of Farm Week. It is Friday afternoon, and I'm here with Zach Ashmore, my colleague and friend, and we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the recent series that we did on Voices from the Flood. That was an interesting series.
Yeah,
we ran 5 parts.
Yeah, it was. It ran in 5 parts, and we showed it over the course of 5 weeks, as it being 5 parts. And yeah, it was a lot of work that went into that. A lot of it behind the scenes that people might not know about, but if they did see the 5th part, they would have seen. No, I'm sorry,
The
it was
6th part.
the
Yeah,
6th part that aired on the show that we aired the 5th part, if I recall.
Yeah.
And it showed the folks who were truly the real heroes behind the scenes on that, which would be Brian Utley and Kerry Lewis, with some help from Jonathan Parrish as well.
If you've seen the series, you know how dramatic the flood was in 2019. If you live there, of course you know, but one of the things that we thought we'd talk a little bit about was the surprising lack of national attention to that flood. 550,000 acres at one point underwater. Hard to imagine that much water and everything that the folks lost.
Yeah, some folks called it a bathtub effect, but
Yeah.
from the footage that I saw, and I'm sure the footage that many people saw when if they watched the series, that it looked more like these poor folks were living in a lake, a very big lake, almost an inland sea.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous how, even though it was fairly shallow, maybe it got up to, what, 10 feet maybe at the top? 10 to 15 feet, somewhere in there?
Easily could have been that, maybe more in some places depending on the elevation.
But still, it was a disaster, a very big natural disaster that nobody talked about. It's sort of the flood that everyone forgot, and I suppose it's because last year was such a wet year in general. I don't recall if any other major floods of that extent happened anywhere else in the country. I don't think it did, but at the very least, nobody cared.
Certainly not for the length of time, which is one of the things that amazed the people that were so dramatically affected by this. And the good news is, at least we think what's going to be happening. We're taping this on October 2nd. A week ago, the governor released a report about the new environmental impact statement that's going to be coming out probably in about a week. And when that comes out, for about 6 weeks afterwards, the public will be invited to give public comment. And I think that, combined with some of the video interviews that we did for the series, I think the Army Corps of Engineers is definitely going to get much more of an open. Their eyes will be opened.
I will say this much for these stories: as painful as it was to look at the suffering these people went through, I am very glad that we went through this with them. I'm very glad that we did these stories. Because it is obvious that folks in authority who can do something about it have seen these. They've seen this, and it has caused them to say to themselves, this is truly an issue that needs to be taken care of. It's one of those rare issues where you feel like you've actually done something to positively impact people's lives despite a horrible event like that.
And just to reiterate, this entire effect was man-made. This flood was going to happen, but it was dramatically worse because of the bathtub effect. The Mississippi River drains 31 states, comes out in the Gulf of Mexico, and along the way there are 22 places where this kind of effect is happening, where they've built up levees and various ways to drain the land. All of them have pumps, except for the one in the Yazoo backwater area, which is in the South Delta of Mississippi. So when it rains, like it did in 2019, and the Mississippi River is high, the water can't be drained into the Mississippi and goes out. It's got to be pumped out separately. But without the pumps, which the EPA vetoed in 2008, there's nowhere for the water to go.
Yeah, that's an interesting part to it, is that particular part of the Mississippi Delta is the only part of the Mississippi River that has that flooding effect as a potential if the rains are too high and doesn't have pumps. Like a similar delta on the other side of the river in Louisiana does have pumps. So that one part of Mississippi on that entire Mississippi River way didn't have pumps, even though other parts that were in similar condition, or at least had similar potential to flood, did. I know I'm reiterating, but that's just how it is. I find that kind of mind-boggling that they put pumps in everywhere else that this could have happened except that one place. And the people who lived there knew that that was going to happen eventually. They just didn't know when.
They didn't know when, and of course they got the 100-year flood in 2019, and it just kept raining and kept raining, and for 7 months, all of that land, a good chunk of it anyway, was underwater. So a lot of folks lost everything. So we're going to see in the coming weeks what kind of public comment there will be. I'm anxious to see what some of those people will say. We know that the biggest opposition to the pumps has come from environmental groups, and which is interesting in and of itself, because they say that certain habitats and animals will be wiped out, and yet 500,000 acres wiped out thousands upon thousands of animals. And we had video of some of that in our series.
Yeah, it is fascinating that this one area of the Mississippi River Basin that does not have pumps installed, the EPA decided to, or not the EPA, but environmentalist groups, they decided to dig in their heels on this one area. And you know, I'm not going to sit here and rail against environmentalist groups or environmentalism in general, but I think it's fair to say that they may have gotten this one wrong. They might have.
Hard to say, and we're not going to take political sides.
Yeah.
But one thing we think will probably happen is if the Army Corps of Engineers decides to go ahead and put the pumps in after all of this, that decision could come in January. We've been told, a good likelihood that the pump location may change. But if the net result is the same, if there's less water in the event of a big giant flood or, you know, a rainstorm like the ones that we had last year, folks will be protected. We do know that 686 homes were directly impacted, thousands of people displaced, at least $1 billion in crop damage. And in that 1,550 square mile area, which is the South Delta, sort of an arrowhead pointed south that, between the Mississippi and the Yazoo rivers. So I'm hoping that the Army Corps of Engineers will change its mind, reverse its veto from before with this new supplemental environmental impact statement, and get the pumps built.
Yeah, I think the best case scenario is that if everyone can all get together and come to a fair consensus. You know, and I think that's the best case scenario on this, is that everybody takes a nice close look at what happened, and they can all come together and figure out a solution that makes everyone at least somewhat okay with it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's the thing about compromise. Not everyone's going to walk away happy. In fact, most people not walking away happy usually is what happens. But at least they can walk away satisfied that their voice was heard and something got done.
Yeah,
you know,
I think that's exactly how they feel right now. So stay tuned to Farm Week. We'll continue to cover this story, and as soon as we know what the environmental impact statement says, and we'll also bring you some of the public comment from that, all of us will know what the outcome is likely to be. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.